Hello everybody. How you been? I hope you've been well. Thanks for coming by. I got a little story I want to tell you and a couple things. It's a crappy story. But there's some things you may not know that you may never need to know. But in the event this ever happens to you, you'll be glad you knew this. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Welcome to Tough Dog World.
Close enough. So the story goes like this. I come home from work at 3 o'clock in the morning. I get to bed about 5. And at 7 o'clock I get woken up. My mom's going, "Bruce, you gotta turn off the water. The bathroom's flooding." I'm like, oh my. So I jump up, I run in there, and see water just gushing out of the toilet tank. And I reach down, turn the water off. And then I proceed to try to collect my wits enough to figure out where to proceed from there, because I still have to go back to work this day. And let me show you what happened. I'm going to try to zoom in on it. I think you can see that big old crack going all the way down it. Yes, that's a crack. And what had happened is that Mom, that morning, had taken the lid off, that porcelain lid, and I'm sure it slipped out of her fingers and she dropped it. And it just bonked on the edge of that ceramic tank and it cracked it wide open. This is the first time in my life I've ever seen a toilet tank cracked. But the lid is heavy, and it is just porcelain. You know, it's ceramic, and it will crack like a pot that you'd put flowers in or whatever. And water was just gushing out of there. So, and the reason she was inside it, because you could see the rust line inside. Now, this is an old toilet. It was here when we bought the house, and she was notoriously for wanting to put these bleach tablets in there, trying to get rid of that. And well, she just couldn't help herself. She couldn't leave well enough alone. And she will not admit that she dropped that lid on that tank. She says, "Oh, they just do that. Sure, they just crack like that all the time." I'm like, "Mom, really? Are you kidding me?" But at any rate, to get on with the story, let me proceed to get out of this messy garage and finish telling you. All right. So, I have the foresight to figure out that I need to get a tank that will work on that base. And pretty much they will all interfit as far as the main hole goes. But you have 2 bolts that hang out of the bottom of the tank. And their distance apart varies from manufacturer to manufacturer and model to model. So I measured those, and they were 6 inches apart. So I went to the hardware store, which I called them, and they said, "Yeah, we have tanks, come on down." So I went up there, and they go, "No, we don't have tanks. We just have complete toilets." I'm like, "Well, you told me you had tanks." They said, "Well, we got a couple in the back. Come on, let's go look." So we go back in their warehouse, and on the shelf was 4 or 5 tanks, and they're covered in dust. They're not in a box. And we look at them, and they look fine. They've got all the internal working devices, the flapper and the seal and all that stuff, the valve. And I go, "Well, we need to measure those holes to make sure they're the right thing for what I need." And we find one that's 6 inches apart. I'm like, "Yeah." So he writes the number down that's on the shelf there by the... And turns out, I bring it home, put it on. Oh, well, it wouldn't ring up. And another guy says, "Oh, those are out of inventory, just $20, and keep your receipt in case there's a problem." Look here. Woohoo. That's a story for another day. I'll have to get back with you on this. Let me entertain these guys for a minute, and I'll get back to you. Alright, so where was I? The bolts, 6 inches apart. They told me they had a tank. They didn't have a tank. Went back to the warehouse. They had some old ones that were covered in dust, not in boxes. We looked at them. I found one with the right size holes. They got up there, they couldn't scan the SKU. So another guy said just 20 bucks. Those are out of inventory, extra stock. Keep your receipt in case there's a problem. Okay, so I brought it home and I put it in. The bolts lined up beautifully. Filled it with water, had a crack in it, leaking like a sieve. Not as bad as the broken one, but leaking. So I turned the water off, disconnect it, take it back. I say, this one's cracked, can you trade me for another one? Well, let's look. Well, they had 4 or 5 of them, and they had one more that had the right size bolt holes. I said, well, I'll take it and try it. I brought it home, hooked it up, and it had a crack. But it was just a small crack. It was just a drip, drip, drip situation. I'm like, man, I don't have time to set a whole toilet right now before I go back to work. I'm gonna make do with this. I put a pan under it to catch the water until I can figure out and get a new tank somewhere. So I get online, and here's where the important information comes from. I get online and I look for toilet tanks. Now, the information that you need to know is, unless you know the manufacturer and the model number of the toilet that you're working with, you're not going to be able to find the dimensions on how far apart those bolts are. A lot of them will have reviews, questions and answers from previous purchasers, and somebody might say how far apart are those bolts, and somebody else might answer them. Well, I found one where somebody said, how far apart are those bolts? And somebody said 6.5 inches. Well, the bolts in this one the holes were oblong. And I measured from one side of one to one side, the same side of the other. And it was 6 inches. Well, I thought, surely there's a 1/2 inch of wiggle room in there. Well, this tank, I waited for a week for it to get here, and it turned out I was wrong. There was not a 1/2 inch of wiggle room in there, so that tank did me no good. So I called up that particular big box appliance store, home improvement center, and told them my dilemma, and they said, bring it to us and we'll, give you your credit back and do what we can to make it right for you. So I ended up buying a whole new toilet, which I was trying to avoid because I just didn't want to mess with it. But, the tank was 50 bucks. The whole toilet itself was 100 bucks. So they gave me my 50 bucks back, and I bought a whole toilet, which cost me 100 bucks. And the wax ring to go with it. I brought it home, set it, and it's beautiful. It's low water consumption. It's all new. There's no rust stains in it. And it's a quiet flush, low volume water usage. It's real nice. I have no problems with it. But the situation is that if you don't know how far apart the bolts are, or if you do know and you try to find out, you're not going to be able to find out. The manufacturers do not put that in the specifications on any of the tanks I looked at. So if you ever crack a toilet tank, unless you know your model number and manufacturer, chances are you might as well just plan on buying a new toilet. The whole thing. Because it's a crapshoot. And as you tell by my story, I installed 2 tanks that day and still ended up having to install it a 3rd time when I bought the whole toilet. So, yeah, it was a crappy situation, pardon the pun. But now you know. And, of course, while you're at a big box appliance home improvement center buying a toilet, you have to buy your wife a new stove, because she's been wanting one ever since you bought the house. So that's why you just saw the delivery truck pull up. And that's a whole different story for another video. And I'll tell you what, that's the 2nd time they've been here to deliver that same stove. And I'll tell you why that in the next video. But anyway, thanks for coming by, you guys, and listening to me chatter. And yeah, now I just got to get that toilet out for the trash and take the other tank back for the people and get my 20 bucks back. But, alright, we'll see ya. Y'all take care. And Don't mind the kitties. Look at this little rascal. They're funny as they can be. Look at him. I don't know if you can even see him there. He's black. There's 3 black ones, just right on time for Halloween. They're just everywhere. Playing with the cables on that tiller. They're freaking bonkers. Alright, we'll see you guys. Bye-bye. There's little mama. Pat just asked me to call and make an appointment to get her fixed. We keep having these litters of kittens and we don't need them. Matter of fact, we're going to be finding homes for these rascals. Just as soon as we can. Alright, that's it for now, you guys. We'll see you. Y'all take care. And we'll see you around. Alright, thanks for coming by. Cheers.